Jonah Coleman is coming back.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're coming at you with a special bonus edition on Black Friday. Lars, we wanted to do this yesterday, but we wanted to also take some time off, spend it with our families, have a nice Thanksgiving. And my sister and I were cooking all day, so we had a blast. But we got a lot of fun stuff that we need to talk about today because Jonah Coleman announced his return to Washington. Let's just jump right into it and how it's going to impact the 2025 roster. But what was your first reaction when you saw this?
I mean, I wasn't surprised, but what first came to mind was kind of how everybody came back in 22, and you kind of just saw the slow trickle down. But really, actually, Mike, I think it was either Mike or Jalen McMillan, was one of those first two guys that I think J-Mac we always knew was going to come back, but he kind of waited until the very end. Mike was the one that I think had Mike done that announcement. Right. And so like it was kind of like a combination effect where it's like J-Mac was always coming back. So it wasn't like Mike pulled him back. It always felt like Jonah was coming back. I know we had this discussion on the podcast many times over the course of the last couple of months. And it just seemed like, because I wrote this in my story yesterday for Athlon, where it's like, had Jonah got Ashton Genty level usage, and I don't mean like yardage and production, but I mean like, he was only getting 12 to 15 carries in the month of September. They were really trying to kind of balance out the entire room. I think if Jonah had come to Jedd and said, look, I'm coming here for 1 year and then I'm going to the league, and it was understood completely, I think we would have seen a much different split setup in terms of how those carries would have gone in the month of September and October. And so after that, and then you factor in, took some, not time off, but let's just call it, gave him some rest in the month of October with the nagging injury that he had. And I don't think it was an injury. I think it was kind of just, he's your best pass blocker. So he kind of took a couple of shots, just needing to get some break. And I think that also fueled the thought of, well, if you're giving him some rest now, what are you resting him for? You're to finish 7-5, to finish, whatever you want to call it. It's resting him to make sure, hey, you know what? Let's get Adam in. Let's get Cam Davis's carries, see what Sam Adams can do, anybody else, knowing that 25 is going to be the year for Jonah. But that doesn't discredit his 1,000-yard season this season. It just more or less kind of sense like, hey, you know what? We know Jonah's probably coming back. And then Jedd's comments about 90%. And it's like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I looked at it from an NFL draft perspective, where I was having this conversation with somebody a little bit more in the know than myself on that sort of stuff yesterday. And they said to me, Jonah could realistically be the first running back off the board next season, or after this next year of college football. And I agreed. Where you look around the country, you look at this draft class in particular, Ashton Genty, the guys at Ohio State, whoever it is you want to name, Jaden Ott being another big one. You can look around and say there are a lot of really good backs that Jonah would have to compete with. And it's not that he isn't up for that competition. It's just, why not? You have the eligibility. You're bought into Jedd's program. Why not go back? And now, we're going to get into it later. The leadership aspect of this is the most important thing, in my opinion, where one of the most impressive things, in my opinion, about Jonah and the way Jedd has talked about him this year is the way that time and time again, he'll always say, yeah, the way Jonah has grown as a leader all season long has been really great. It's been really helpful for our program. And with, everything we know is coming next year in terms of all the young guys, having a guy like Jonah, as Jedd, again, has said many times, having a voice like that in our room to talk about what our program is and what it's like when you're here for 4 years is vital. And having Jonah, who's now going to be able to do that, is going to be really important. Lars, we got so much more we want to get to this after a quick break. Which will get you right after message from our good friends over at Gametime, because Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, which is great news for anybody out there who wants to go check out the Husky basketball team. They look really great right now against Santa Clara in the Acrisure Invitational. If you want to check out the Seahawks, the Kraken, there's so many great tickets you can find over on the Gametime app, because with Gametime Picks, curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. with all-in pricing. You can toggle this feature and it shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. And with seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. So, Lars, what else about this is just this Jonah announcement is important to you?
Well, I mean, it kind of keeps the cohesion together. It's one thing that, when I asked Jedd, kind of what's your main recruiting selling points, one thing he mentioned was, well, our staff continuity. Everybody's been together. And you pair that with what, again, not to go back to the Big Ten Media Day thing, but there was actually a couple of polls that I wanted to mention from that. I don't know if I mentioned on the show before, but Jonah has slipped in during his podium press availability. He's like, I'll be back here. And when he pointed to here, he was pointing at the table, meaning to Indianapolis, to Lucas Oil Stadium. Now, there's a caveat to that. He didn't add to that. He just said, I'll be back here. Are you coming back for the combine? Or are you coming back to play Lucas Oil in a Big Ten championship in 2025? And I think the latter is the one that kind of struck me, where it's like, there's no way Jonah would say that about himself. And they're like, I'll be here for the NFL combine. It's like, well, yeah, no doubt. But the point being, it's like, since he didn't caveat it, it's like, well, which one do you mean? And I think it really adds into that. I'm glad you mentioned the leadership angle, because when you're breaking in DeMond next year, whether DeMond starts at Oregon or not, which we both think he will, but even let's say if DeMond starts the next two games, the Oregon game and the bowl game, even if he gets two starts, that's still only two starts. That's not a lot. So you're going to need some experienced guys around him, and knowing how vital Jonah's been in the run game and kind of just the run game to set up the offense and everything like that. And that's why getting those reps with him at Iowa with the zone read and things like that, that's why that was so important, because it's not just, you want him to get work with Adam Muhammad, because obviously Adam is going to be the 2+ year guy here. But with that, when I'm talking about 25, 26 and beyond, potentially beyond, Jonah doesn't have anything beyond 25. So working in both of those guys was important, but not just solely focusing on Adam, because if Jonah wants to come back, that's the key for DeMond. Like, hey, you don't have to work in that relationship.
So that was one thing that stood out to me that I was thinking about as you said that, where we had talked a lot about the future of Adam Muhammad, where the coaching staff is very high on it. We are very high on him on this show. But one thing that you might not necessarily want for him is all of a sudden, after getting whatever he's got, I think it's 43 carries right now as a freshman, going from that to, just for an example, a Jonah Coleman workload this year. I think he's at 140, 145, something like that in terms of carries, where that's not a jump you want him to make, where all of a sudden next season, Jonah doesn't have to have this heavy of a workload if you don't want him to. And all of a sudden you can work in more Adam, where instead of having to do a 3-back rotation this year, where you're not going to push Cam Davis off the side. And he's been really effective, especially when you think about some of the screens he's been used on, different things like that. He's been effective at a lot of different points this year, but you can't, in the same light, just say, all right, we want Adam to take over for you. So next season, now all of a sudden, you can find a way to run a 2-back system very effectively, the way that we know Jedd wants to, and the way that we know he likes to from his time in Arizona. So all of a sudden I think about that, what a senior Jonah is going to look like, what sophomore Adam is going to be with another year in the weight room, and another year just getting his body right now that he knows what Big Ten play is going to look like. And you talk about DeMond, it all plays perfectly off him, where, I feel like we assume that this is going to be one of those moments where all the other guys are going to be coming back, right? Whether it be Denzel Boston, Ephesians Prysock, whoever you want to say, all these guys that we know this coaching staff wants to build around, all will potentially come back because of this moment right now. Or maybe they're already planning to, and now we're going to start seeing those pile in over the next couple of weeks. And then something we talked about a few weeks ago on the show, all of a sudden we're looking at a 2025 season where it's a 2015, 2016 sort of jump that we saw under Chris Peterson.
Exactly. Well, and to kind of look at how Jonah, because I'm glad the Adam Muhammad comparison and track record, 75 and 22, 125 roughly in 23, and now 173 and 24. You can see the progression from Adam. If Adam's able to get up to, let's say, 65 this year, 115, 120 next year, 175, 224, 26, whatever that number checks out to be.
Sure.
And but it's the same exact progression at the position. And so Jedd's not compensating for Jonah, saying, oh, we need to give Jonah Ashton Genty numbers. We need to feed him the ball. We need to just, because those are the kind of situations where you're looking at it and you're looking at the head coach and saying, you don't really have a plan, do you? You can see Jedd has a firm plan, and that's why I think he's harped so much on it. And for the 20 millionth time, as we said on this podcast, this was the foundation year. And the fact that now a foundational piece is coming back again with the majority of your offensive line, with your starting quarterback, with your backup running back, with basically all your receivers minus one potentially. Everything is all there, and that's why we're so optimistic about the offense next year, is because they will have a running start. This is a lot different than breaking in an entirely new system, offense, everything that they did in 24.
Running start, pun intended, right? I got to give you that one. That one was solid either way. But Lars, let's jump into what else this roster could look like next season. Right after a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I know we've talked about the the NFC side of things with the Lions. Let's jump over to the AFC Super Bowl right now. Futures over on FanDuel. I like the Buffalo Bills. I think Josh Allen, this is going to be the year he really gets over the hump. They already beat the Chiefs once this season. I know it usually levels itself out in the playoffs, but I like what that team's got going for them, and I really think they can make some moves. You can go check out all their odds and so much more over on FanDuel. So Lars, we got so much more that we need to get to from this. The live is going crazy right now. This is great. I love my computer. We got to do it live. This is great. But one thing that we really need to get into is the transfer portal. It opens on December 9th, and we've got 10 days to that. My math is terrible. But when I look at it, this is that kind of moment where we look at what else could happen over the course of the next month or so, outside of just what may happen tomorrow as we record this on Friday. What could happen in terms of all the guys that are going to end up signing with Washington, what the 2025 class is going to look like. But when we think about guys that could be added to this roster, we know that there's going to be a lot on the defensive side, but you look at on offense, maybe a tight end, maybe an offensive lineman or two. And getting a guy like Jonah to come back, all of a sudden, some of these guys that might have been considering Washington and watching him on TV, they say, oh, Jonah Coleman's coming back? Yeah, that's a guy I want to block for. That's a guy I want to play alongside. It feels like this could be that moment, a lot like what Mike was.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it takes me back to what Max McCree said last summer when he's like, hey, when I came up for my visit, I talked to your star running back. And I was like, there's only one that can come to mind. Yeah. And that was with no experience in coming off of, the hype train, I guess, if anything else. But now that you have a whole year of Jonah and seeing what guys can do, and also the personality of Jonah, like if you're a recruit, like if you're a transfer guy, let's say you're coming from NC State, I'm coming from Texas A&M. Let's just throw two schools out, just two random schools, but outside of the Pacific Northwest, outside of the area, so we don't know anything. Could you pick a better dude to pair you with for 48 hours than Jonah Coleman and say, you know what, I'm going to show you what Seattle is like, and I'm going to show you why you want to be a Husky. But he's just such an authentic guy. Like he's like talking to Jonah at Big Ten meeting and hearing his story. And I think that's the other side of this equation that we probably should touch on just for like 30 seconds to a minute. The NIL impact of this is huge. You think back to Savon Ahmed when he got his 1K yardage season and then dipped off to the NFL. He's been fighting for it ever since because NFL teams want to see that second year. Can you do it for 2 years in a row? Running back isn't a popular position in terms of, hey, you're going to, there's only one or two Saquon Barkleys. There's only one or two top guys that you're actually going to go in the first round or maybe even in the second round. Jonah, I think, absolutely is a day one, day two pick in terms of probably early in that kind of like Bishop Sankey, where he goes in the second round next season. Could be one of the first guys taken, no doubt. And when it comes to the running back position. But now that you don't have to look at Jonah and say, well, hey, I came from the mud. I want to go get my money. Get your money right here. And I think that's why Washington's NIL is so important, is making sure you keep some of these guys to be like, hey, you know what? Jedd's building this. You don't need to go chase that NIL or NFL money. Come chase the NIL money, not chasing it, but take advantage of the NIL resources that you have in college and position yourself better for the pros than just trying to chase a bag.
So we've gotten plenty of questions from our everydayers, whether it be on YouTube, through our insider program, where it's all about, hey, what is the NIL like? We don't have numbers that we can give you. We don't. Like, it's not like we're trying to hide anything. We just legitimately don't. Nobody has those. But this is what we can say. You look at this where that absolutely had to play a factor in it. Where, we've got some comments over here, like Kraken Hawk says, got to keep Boston now. That's another thing where you can find a way to keep all these guys. Like, Washington's NIL resources are up there. They have a fantastic amount of resources that you can leverage. Look at what the basketball team is doing. Look at how that recruiting is going. You think that that's not I don't want to say significant factor, but that's not at least a piece of the pie there. You could say the same thing on the football side. All the NIL resources at Washington are elite, and Jedd has done a really good job of helping cultivate and helping develop those over his time here. So I look at this and I say, whatever it is that you want at Washington, you can come find that. And this announcement from Jonah shows that. He says, exactly as you said, Lars, you want to go find that NFL money? Yeah, for sure. Here, let's match that for one more season. Let's find a way to, whatever it might be, for one more year to go chase a spot in the college football playoff now that it's expanded. And you can find a way to do that. And there are so many just great opportunities like that Washington provides. But Lars, that's all we got. Oh, you got one more thing? Yeah, because we're going to have to get out of here in a second.
Yeah, no, but this will tie up in the NFL thing.
Oh, please, yeah.
One thing that I learned, and I'm sure you probably already knew this, but one thing that kind of hammered home this week was if you're a second-round pick, you have a partially guaranteed. I think it's your first 2 years or first 3 years in the league is guaranteed. Beyond that, the only thing guaranteed is your signing bonus. So if you're not guaranteed to go in the second round or first round, come back if that money is not under, plus or minus $300K. I'm not saying that's the number, but I'm just saying I think players are looking at it saying, hey, I want to guarantee. Well, if I can guarantee my NIL money, that's better than taking a chance and potentially swinging and missing and knowing I can come back for one more year and there's no way I'm going to fall to like the fourth round with another good year next season.
Right. Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all every day for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. And just so you know, whenever we go live like this, it's really important to make sure that you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so never miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you after the game.